So welcome to Evergreen hold types. Today we'll be getting into the different types of holds that are available within Evergreen, um, when you might want to use those holds, and how those holds actually function. We'll be talking a little bit about some of the underlying mechanics of what's happening when you place holds as well. Our agenda for today, we're going to start actually with a review of the hold targeter. Now, the hold targeter itself and how it functions is a bit of a mystery to a lot of people. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time giving you some insight into what's kind of happening at the back end of Evergreen when you're placing holds and how it's determining where patrons go in the queue and things like that. So we'll talk a bit about that. Then we will be talking about some different hold types. We'll start by looking at title holds, and those are the basic holds that you generally place most of the time when a patron makes a request. We'll also talk about copy level holds. These are specific holds that are placed on an actual individual copy rather than a larger title. We'll be talking about meta record holds, and these are some useful holds for items that maybe have multiple different formats that would meet a patron's need, or that may have duplicate records in the catalog, and you want to make sure that you're casting as wide a net as possible when placing a hold. And then we'll also talk a little bit about hold groups at the end and how you can use these to kind of make your hold placement for things like book clubs more efficient, or to offer a new service to your patrons if you're not using them yet. So let's go ahead and get into the hold targeter. Now, this is sort of the most complex part of what we'll be talking about today, because it is going into how holds are targeted, how queue order is determined, and things like that. If you have questions, please feel free to put them in chat. So the holds targeter, we're going to start by looking at the order of targeting. Basically, when a hold is placed, Evergreen immediately starts looking for something that can fill that hold. And it does this in kind of widening circles of searching. So it starts by looking for items owned by the branch that has been set for the hold pickup. So not the patron's home library, but whatever they have set as the pickup branch for their hold. And typically that is going to be the same as the home library, though not all the time. So if there is an item available to fulfill this hold at the branch where the pickup has been, where the patron wants to pick it up, that's the item that will be targeted. If that item is either not owned by that branch, or it's not currently available because it's checked out to another patron, then Evergreen widens its search and looks for other branches within the same system. So, if you are at the PAC branch in Buncombe, Evergreen's first going to search for an item available in PAC. But if there's nothing available in PAC, then it'll widen its search to look for anything at any branch within Buncombe. Now, if there is nothing available to fulfill a hold within the system as a whole, then Evergreen starts to look outside of the system. And previously, this just meant that it would find the first available. Now it's actually, once it hits that third step, it's actually still going in kind of a graded order, in that it's looking for items at the closest libraries and then moving out from there because of the proximity adjustments that we made. Now, this, of course, all happens very quickly, so it's not taking days and days for this targeting to happen, but it is happening in this order. So you can think of it as almost a flow chart. Is the item available at the pickup branch? Yes, target that for hold. No, check the system. Is the item available at the system? If yes, target that for hold. If no, move outside of the system and start to work through external systems in order of proximity. Now, of course, once an item has been targeted, all that means is that the item will hold up or show up on the owning library's pull list. So those of you who work with holds regularly, you know that you get that list in the morning, you print it off, and that gives you the list of everything to pull from your shelves to fulfill holds. It's going to show up on that list. If the library that has that on its pull list does not pull it within 24 hours, Evergreen will automatically retarget it. So if you don't act on the hold within 24 hours, then that hold will retarget and it'll continue down this order where it will continue to look first at the pickup branch, then at the system, and then externally. So just something to keep in mind, that one of the reasons that we do ask you to take care of that pull list daily is because it will retarget holds if they're not captured. But on the other hand, you also don't have to worry that if the person who handles your holds is out sick one day and misses pulling items, that patrons will have to wait to get their items because it will retarget to another library. Okay, so I did get a question in chat. It came to me directly, so others may not be able to see it, asking if this is within the holdings of the particular record that the request was placed on. So yes, this is going to be looking at the holdings of the record. So when we're talking about this, we're generally talking about title or meta record holds, because if it is a copy level hold, then the only thing that could potentially fill that hold is the exact barcode that is targeted within the copy request. But with a title level hold or a meta record hold, then yes, it's looking at the holdings attached to the record that the request was placed on. Did that answer the question? Okay. So the order of targeting is important because it does give you some insight into what Evergreen does to try to make this process go efficiently. Obviously, the closer to pickup an item is, the faster it's going to be able to fulfill that hold. But there's a little bit more going on in addition to this order of targeting, because Evergreen at the same time it's doing this is also determining whether or not the hold is actually eligible. So the first thing that it's going to do when it's looking at eligibility is check the patron. Is the patron eligible to place a hold? So basically it's going to check whether or not the patron's account is blocked. So if they have too many long overdue or lost items, if they have too many fines where they wouldn't be able to check out items, then they're going to be blocked from being able to place new holds. Additionally, Evergreen will check to see if a patron is barred. So this is that type of blocking that happens not because of transactions within Evergreen itself, but because of some sort of external behavior. So if a patron is barred from using the library because of behavioral issues outside of anything that would be recorded in Evergreen, then that barring will also stop them from being able to place holds. That barring is something that is manually applied to their accounts. But if it has been applied, then that patron will not be able to place successful holds. And then the third thing it looks at is that the patron's account has not expired. So as long as the patron's account is in good standing, they should be able to place holds. There is one more factor in this, and that is the max holds. So this is dependent upon the library where the patron is actually trying to pick up the hold. Each library has hold policies, and those policies include a maximum number of holds that can be placed on an item type. So if a patron has exceeded that, they won't be able to place more holds until those holds have either been checked out or canceled. So that's going to differ from library to library, whereas the first three are just sort of a blanket holds block. But once the patron has been deemed eligible, then Evergreen will also check to make sure that the item itself is eligible. And it can do this for two different things, for a title hold or a copy hold. For a title hold, it's going to do that ordering that we talked about, branch system proximity, and it's going to make sure that there's actually holdings available that could fill this hold. To do that, as it looks out at the branch level, if it identifies an item, it checks, is this item holdable? Is this item a reference item? And is this item age hold protection? If you're at the branch level, that age hold protection does not matter, actually. If the answer is that yes, it's holdable, no, it's not reference, and because we're at the branch level, age hold protection doesn't matter, then it checks to see if it's available. If it's available, it will target for hold. It will allow the hold to go through, and then it will target that item. If it's not available, then it checks at the system level. Does this item exist in the system? is this item holdable in the system? Is it reference? And then once again, age hold protection doesn't matter. If all that's true and the item's available, then the hold is successful and the item is targeted. If it goes externally from the system, so basically it has not found anything that it could target for a hold within the system itself, and it goes externally, then it's going to ask the same questions again, but now age hold protection kicks in. So Evergreen will check, are there holdings available? And if they are they holdable? Are they reference? And now are they age hold protected? Now, if at any point in this process, the answer to these questions is no, then that hold request isn't going to be successful. So if there's nothing at the branch level, there's nothing at the system level, and once it goes externally from the system, everything is age hold protected, that hold request actually won't be successful. If the request is successful, but there's nothing available to fulfill it, then basically the person goes into the queue. So basically you're doing a couple things at once. The Evergreen is determining if there is something that potentially could fulfill the hold because it's eligible for holding, and that determines whether the hold request will be successful. It's also determining whether or not there is anything that is currently eligible to fill the hold, and if there is, it will target it. And so that will actually start the process of putting an item in transit for pickup. And then if there's nothing available, but the hold is eligible, then it puts a patron into a queue. Does that make sense? Let's see. I also got a question here asking for institutional holds. Is there a priority for those? And are there max holds for institutional patrons? So on the max holds question, that depends on how you set up the hold policy. That is up to the individual libraries to determine if they want to set a max hold for institutional patrons. And if so, then it's whatever you've set. So if you'd like, Pat, after this, I can double check what Cumberland's is and let you know. There is not a priority for institutional holds, though. They go into the queue the same way that any other patron does. All right, and Pat, I will make a note to get back to you with Cumberland's max holds. All right, so basically with a title hold, we're determining if a hold can be placed at all, and if so, can it be targeted or does the patron go into the queue? A similar process happens with the copy hold, but the difference is that you're not going through that branch system external proximity process because you're only targeting a single item. And so basically Evergreen is going to look at that item itself, not all of the holdings attached to a record, but one specific item. And it's going to look at that item and say, is it holdable? Is it reference? And if it's outside of the system, is it age hold protected? If it is not holdable, it is reference, or it's under age hold protection, the request will not be successful. If the request is successful, but the item's not available, the patron goes into the queue. So it's doing a similar thing as the title hold process, but it is doing it without that kind of widening circle of searching. It's targeting a specific item. And so that item is either going to be holdable or not. And if it's not, then that copy hold is simply not going to work. That item's either going to be age hold protected or not. If it's protected, then the request is simply not going to work. And then that item is going to be available or not. And if it's available, great, it's going to target it. If it's not available, then the hold will go through, but the patron will be in the queue for it. Does that make sense to everyone? Does anyone have any lingering questions about that? So at this point, we've talked about patron eligibility as well as item eligibility or title eligibility. There's one more piece that comes into this, and it's a little bit different, and that's library eligibility. The first two pieces, the patron and the record, basically work the same no matter where you are in Cardinal. It's basically looking for yes or no answers to a specific set of questions. Library eligibility is going to change based on which libraries we're talking about, because it's going to come in, hold policies are going to come into play at this point. So there are 4 libraries considered as part of determining eligibility. There's the user home library, the requesting library, the pickup library, and the owning library. So the user home library is the library that patron is registered to. The requesting library is the library where the request is made. If the patron is making the request via the OPAC, so they're doing it themselves, their requesting library will be their home library. If they're coming up to the desk in a library, wherever the workstation, the staff member who puts the request in for them, whatever their workstation is, that's going to register the requesting library. The pickup library is whatever the patron sets as the library they want to pick up. So once again, if we're talking about Buncombe, you can have a West Asheville patron, that's their home library, who walks into PAC, makes a request, so the requesting library becomes PAC, but they want to pick it up in South Asheville. So you could have 3 different libraries for those. That's rare. Generally speaking, you're going to have 1 to 2, but it's possible to have 3 different libraries for those 3 different categories. The owning library, of course, is the library that owns the actual book being targeted, and that comes into play a little bit later. The first 3 come into play when the request is made. So if a patron makes a request, then as part of that eligibility check, Evergreen's also going to check, does this user's home library have a policy that would block them from making this hold? Maybe they're trying to place a hold on games, and there's a policy that says users from this library cannot place holds on games. I will let you know that there are very few policies that are user home library dependent. For the most part, it's completely agnostic who or which library a patron actually belongs to, but it is possible to set that, and there are some hold policies that do take that into consideration. It's also going to check whether or not the library where the request is being made has a policy that would block requests from that library. So you might see this sometimes with outreach and things like that. If you have a bookmobile or that type of location, if a request is made from that location, you could see a block. But again, this is a rare one. Most of our policies are agnostic on the requested library as well. The pickup library is where it really matters, because there are going to be libraries that have different policies based on the pickup. So you may have a patron who would be perfectly fine to place a hold at their home library if they were picking up at that library, but they visited their neighboring county, and their neighboring county has a max holds of 5. And they've already exceeded that 5. And because they're trying to pick it up at that library's hold policy kicks in. So the pickup library is really the key when it comes to whether or not a hold request will be successful. It's not across the board because it is dependent on policies, and all 3 of these can play into which policy gets hit, but most of our policies are generally speaking, let any Cardinal user, regardless of home library or requesting library, make their requests. Pickup library is the one where you could end up with a block. So those 3 determine whether or not something can be successful. Owning library determines whether or not an item is going to fulfill a hold. So if we're talking about a title level hold where any number of holdings could fulfill that. So if there are 50 different copies floating around NC Cardinal, any one of those 50 copies could go to fulfill this hold. And so when a hold is going to be targeted, Evergreen will check, does this owning library, the library that owns this individual copy that I'm trying to target, does that library have a policy that would block this hold? And so, if that library says, well, we don't allow people to place holds on DVDs, and the request is for a DVD, the request originally was successful because there was nothing that stopped it at the time, but that individual copy of that DVD won't be targeted because the owning library is blocking it. You also see larger blanket policies, and again, this is something you see a lot with bookmobiles, where a library may be set to skip for holds. So it doesn't matter what type of item is targeted. If a library is set to skip holds, then Evergreen's not going to target a copy from that library. So you see this a lot with bookmobiles, but you may also see it if a library is undergoing renovations or had damage or something like that. And so they're not currently sending things out via resource sharing while they do construction. But for the most part, this is something that comes into play only at the point where an item is targeted. So a hold can be successful, but an individual copy may not fulfill that hold because of the owning library. Does anybody have any questions about that? Now, the hold targeter is complicated. There's a lot of factors that go into play, and Evergreen's checking them all kind of at the same time. So you don't see all of these threads as they're actually being pulled on. You just see the end result of this hold was successful or this hold request failed. But understanding what's being checked can give you some insight into why hold requests may fail occasionally. If you do end up having additional questions about this, please feel free to put it in the chat. But let's go on and actually take a look at some of these different types. Oh, I'm sorry. I wanted to talk about opportunistic capture real quick before we do that. So opportunistic capture is an additional factor in this process, because we've talked about how the holds targeter creates the queue and how the holds targeter determines if there is an item eligible to fulfill a request. Opportunistic capture is one of the factors that impacts that. So basically, if a request is successful, the next step is to determine if an item can fulfill the request right now or if the patron goes into the queue. If it can fulfill a request right now, then it goes on a pull list for the owning library and moves forward with the process of putting something into transit. If there's nothing available to fulfill a request, then opportunistic capture is how that request is going to be filled when it can be. So if nothing is available, then what's going to happen is that the next time somebody checks in a copy that could fulfill that hold, then that copy is going to be the one that is targeted. So you have that whole process of determining what to target based on branch, system, and then proximity. But if nothing will work for that, then a check-in can trigger something fulfilling the hold, regardless of branch, system, or proximity. It could be a hold request for pickup in Buncombe, and the item is checked in all the way in Carteret. If that item gets checked in, and there's nothing that would stop the patron in Buncombe from being the next person in the queue, then that item's going to go into transit to Buncombe. Now, generally speaking, that opportunistic capture is going to fill that first hold in the queue, regardless of whether the pickup location is close or not. However, if the check-in library, so the actual place where this physical copy is being checked in, if there is a patron on hold for that item at that location, then that item will actually go to fulfill that local hold first. And this is one of those things that Evergreen does to try to improve the efficiency of holds, because this way something doesn't have to transit a long way. It can immediately fulfill a need and therefore shrink the queue. This does occasionally create some frustration with people where an item maybe lingers for a long time in fulfilling holds outside of its owning system. And it also, creates situations occasionally where a patron is skipping to the front of the queue. However, overall, if you actually look at the data of how holds are being fulfilled, it evens things out pretty well. So there may be individual times where it seems to create an unfair situation, but it actually increases efficiency overall. The patron at the top of the queue is still going to get their item pretty quickly versus that patron who may be leapfrogged to the top of the queue. But that is one of the areas where we get questions occasionally that opportunistic capture has kicked in, and somebody has questions about why one person was targeted for the hold versus another. Are there any questions about opportunistic capture and how that impacts holds? Those of you who work with holds a lot probably see this in action a fair amount. So let's take a quick look at the queue itself. There are two ways that you can look at the queue. So one thing that we do get a lot of questions on is how do I check where a patron is in the queue? There are two things that you can do. They work best when used together. See, I got another question in chat. Let me take a look. So Marie is saying that being part of a regional group, placing a patron copy hold. Yes, they're placing a hold on an individual copy, it looks like, but then when that copy is checked in, it goes to another location in the region. So yeah, it's possible that it's not branch specific, but system specific in terms of opportunistic capture. So if somebody is further ahead in the queue than the hold that you've just placed, but they're within the system, they're going to be targeted ahead of the person at the branch. I'd need to look into that to say for sure that it's system level rather than branch level. But I think that's probably what's happening. And of course, when you're in a regional system, that can be pretty far. That can be crossing county lines and stuff like that versus in a county system where things are much closer together. So I'll double check on that, but I'm pretty sure if what you're describing is happening widely, then it's probably that opportunistic capture takes system pickup into consideration rather than branch pickup. All right, so let's take a quick look at the queue. So you can get to the queue from two places. You can get to it from the actual title record itself, the record that's being targeted for the hold, and from the patron record. From the patron record, you can get to it by coming over here to this drop-down menu for the grid in the patrons holds tab. So if I'm in my patrons holds tab and I come over here to this drop-down, I can choose queue position from here, and then that's going to give me an actual number of where my patron is in the queue that for the hold that she's placed. So I can see that for this one, she's number 4. For this one, which is a copy level, she's number 1. And for this one, which is actually currently suspended, so this is probably going to change before she actually gets her hold, she's number 6. So that's how you can see the actual number. Now, if you want to get a little bit more data about what's going on with these holds, you can do that from the record level. So if I am in the actual record for an item that has holds on it, I can go into the View Holds tab, and then I can actually see the queue. Now, I'm not seeing patron information, but I am seeing hold information. So I can see what are the pickup libraries, what type of hold it is. These are all title holds, and there are 3 potential items that could fulfill them. So that's giving me an idea of kind of how quickly this process is likely to run. How far are things going to have to transit? How many items could potentially fulfill the holds? And are we looking at copy level holds, which could potentially take longer, or title level holds? I can also see the status for all of them. Have they already been targeted? Are they already in transit? Or are they still waiting to be targeted? And I can see things like the request date. How long have these holds been lingering around? Now I'm in dev and I'm using, so nothing is actually moving forward with any of these holds. So those that I placed back in May haven't moved forward. If you're looking at a hold queue where it's still got things that are 3 months old, you might have some questions. But in this case, I'm not too concerned about it. I can take these 2 pieces of information together. So let's say I'm looking at my bibliographic record and I'm looking at the hold queue itself. There's no patron information here, right? But if I look at my patron's place in the queue for this item, she's number 4, then I can tell that this is her hold. So that gives me maybe a little bit of idea of, where we are in terms of of how long it could potentially take. Obviously, there's a whole lot of inference involved in that, but it can at least give you a picture of what's happening with this hold. Now, the queue itself, of course, can get a little funky if you do have opportunistic capture that prioritizes a local patron or something like that. That's going to allow people to leapfrog, but for the most part, you can get queue information this way. All right. So if there are no more questions about that, let's move into looking at actual hold types. And today we're going to look at 3 different types of holds. The title level hold, which is the standard. The copy level hold, which is when you are targeting a specific individual physical item. And then a meta record hold. And that's something that's not used widely, but can be really useful in certain situations. So we'll dive into that. So title level holds, my guess is that most of the people on this call have placed a title level hold at some point. It's the basic type of hold that you place. It is a hold on a bibliographic record, which means that it is the hold on any holding that is attached to that record, whether you have one item attached to the record or 150. Any of those items will be eligible to be targeted depending on their individual situations. It does use the proximity targeter. So it's going to start branch, it's going to move out to system, and then once it gets external from your system, it's going to start looking at things within the proximity. These holds can be placed either by staff or by the patron themselves within their account in the OPAC. And they can also be retargeted. So this is just the standard hold that you usually place. And let's go ahead and take a look at the process of placing one. So I'm going to place a hold on a title record. And there are a couple of different ways that I can do this. I'm going to start from the patron record itself. So if my patron comes up, hands me their card, I look them up in the system, and then she says, can I place a hold? Then I'm already in her account, and I can place a hold directly from that account. From the holds tab, I would click place hold. And this is going to take me into the catalog search. But if I see up here, this box tells me that within that search, I'm placing a hold for Sarah Smith. So I can just do a regular search the way I normally would. Let's see, I'm actually going to do this through a numeric search, and I'm going to look for a specific item barcode. So this takes me into the actual record itself, and I can see that there are 7 different potential items that could fulfill this hold. Now, not all of them are going to be available. I see that 1 is in process. So most likely I've got a pool of 6 potential items, but they're all available. So she's got a good chance of getting this relatively quickly. I can do this from the record itself directly, or I can do this if I were to search within the keyword search. It's going to give me a list of results. And from here, I can place a hold by clicking this green place hold button within the results page. Either of those are an option. Now, if I were to be placing it from the record itself, I use this place hold button here at the top. So either of those are going to take me to the same place, which is this page. So I see that my patron information is already filled in. I can decide to suspend a hold. So if a patron says, I'd like to place a hold on this, but I don't want to pick it up for a few months, I could go ahead and suspend it either until they let me know they want it or until a specific date that they identify at the time. So I could go ahead and place a hold for this, but not let it be active until September 1st. I can change the pickup location as well. That could change the targeting. That could change whether or not the patron is actually eligible, because the pickup location could hit a hold policy that wouldn't be eligible. This is a book though, so that seems unlikely. I'm going to keep it at her standard pickup location. I can also at this time change her notification preferences. I'm going to keep it at email, but I could change it to either phone or SMS. And then I'm going to click place hold. And I see down here that my hold status changed to hold succeeded. So now at this point, it should show up in the patron's account, which I can go to directly by clicking on her name. And so now I see where she had 3 holds before, she now has 4. This is the one that I've just placed. I can see that its status is suspended. If I wanted to make it active, unsuspend it, I could select it from here and come up to the action menu and click activate. So now it's moved from suspended to waiting for capture. And because, as we saw, there were several items that were available for this, the targeter has already gone through that process we talked about, and it's already identified an item to target for this hold. So it's going to show up on that library's pull list. So that process that we talked about that's very complex happens in just 1 second. It's very quick. So that's the process of placing a title record hold from the staff client. It's also possible for the patron to do this themselves from the OPAC. So let's go into the OPAC briefly. There it is. So if I am in the OPAC, I can log in as the patron. And from here, I can just do a regular search as I would anything else. It may take a moment to search. All right, and so once I've found the item that I'd like to place, I can just click the place hold button, or I can go into the record itself within the OPAC, and I can place hold over here on the right side. Either way, I'm going to get to the same interface where, as the patron, I can change my pickup library. I can change my notification preferences, and I can suspend a hold and set an activation date if I wanted to. Once I've done that and I've assured that everything is correct, I submit it. And now if I go back into Sarah Smith's account in the staff client, I see she's gone from 4 holds to 5 holds. And once again, the item that she just placed on hold, Evergreen went through the process of identifying whether or not first the hold was eligible, and that's what allowed it to be successful. And then it identified, is there an item that can be available to fulfill this hold immediately? Once it found one of those, it targeted it for capture. So it's already on a pull list for a library. And that's not surprising considering there are 97 potential items to fulfill this hold. So that's the process on the patron's end. From here, as a staff member, let's say that I work at the library that's on the receiving end of this hold request, and it comes up on my pull list, and for whatever reason, I can't fulfill it at that time. Maybe I pull it off the shelf and I see that it's got some water damage, or that it just needs to go and have some labels reattached. So rather than sending it out for hold, I'd like to transfer it over to tech services to be reprocessed. Or maybe, the person that pulls all the holds is out sick and my library just can't cover that. So somebody could go in and look at everything that comes up in a day, and they can go ahead and retarget them. Retargeting can happen from the library that is pulling the books for capture, or it can happen from the library where the patron has actually placed the hold. So if I wanted to retarget this hold, I could do that from the patron's account, I believe. Coming down here to find another target. So I can reset this hold. The process of targeting is going to happen a second time. And right off the bat, Evergreen has found an alternative option for me. So now it's going to show up on a different library's pull list. If I am retargeting from the library with the pull list, then I can do that from the pull list. And I would simply identify the item that I'm retargeting. I would select it on my pull list. I would come up here to my action menu, and I would click Find Another Target. There are actually a number of different places within Evergreen that you can do a retarget from. So those are two of them, but there are some things that you can do from the record itself as well. But retargeting is an option if for whatever reason you simply cannot fulfill a hold. All right, so those are title holds. Are there any questions about those title level holds? Once again, these are the basic ones. These are the ones that I imagine that most of the people in this webinar have done. All right, well, let's go on and talk about copy level holds. Now, copy level holds are fairly common as well. Not as common as title level holds, but they are something that comes up a lot. They are the holds that target a specific barcode. So whereas a title level hold goes through that whole targeting process to determine what is the best item that can fulfill this by looking both at proximity and at availability. A copy level hold only has one potential target. So it's not looking at proximity and it's not looking at availability. If it's available, it'll go on the pull list. If it's not available, the patron goes into the queue. But it won't skip something that's unavailable to look at something else because it will only target this hold. One of the things that I see people using these for a lot are book clubs. And we're going to talk at the end how you can do some book club holds that allow you to cast a wider net. One of the concerns with copy level holds, of course, is that if the item that's targeted for whatever reason simply cannot fulfill that hold, the patron who's checked it out keeps it until it's way overdue. It somehow got stuck behind the shelf and now nobody who's going out to the shelves can find it. You can retarget it as many times as you want. It's always going to come back and target the same copy. So I could click retarget, but nothing's going to change. So if you place a copy level hold, there is a potential that that item is simply not going to be available to fulfill that hold. So unless there's a good reason for placing the copy level hold, so for example, the patron needs this very specific item because it's the only one in the entire catalog that definitely has this forward that they want to read for the book or something like that. If there's not a specific reason for targeting that exact copy, we recommend that you don't do that. We recommend that you do an item level or a title level hold because that is going to be more likely to actually fulfill the patron's request. There's less of a chance of something of a failure happening. As Marie was saying in the chat earlier, sometimes she'll place a copy level hold for a patron and then that copy will get checked in and it'll end up targeting a different request in the queue. Well, now that patron that has the copy level hold may have to sit and wait for that patron who just got targeted to finish with it before they can get their hold fulfilled, whereas another copy may have come in the next day. Now, of course, there may be reasons that you want to place that copy level hold in that situation because you have it in hand and so you believe that you're most likely going to be able to move that into the queue for that specific patron. And so if that's the case, you can continue to do that, but there are some pitfalls to consider with that. So only one item is targeted. The other thing to keep in mind about this is that it can only be placed by staff. So patrons do not have the ability to do this within the OPAC itself. So let's take a quick look at how to do this for those of you who may not be familiar with the process. So if I am in Evergreen, I'm going to do this once again starting from the patron's account. So let me go back into Sarah Smith's account. And I'm going to go into her holds tab. And I am going to do the same thing I did before where I click the place hold button and I'm going to do my search. So again, I could do a keyword search for a specific title. I can also do a numeric search for a particular barcode, which in this case is probably what I'm going to do because I'm looking for this specific barcode to place the hold on. So because of the settings I have, even though I did a specific barcode, it did bring me to the record where I see everything. But I'm going to kind of basically go through and find the specific barcode I wanted. In order to do that, I'm going to widen my barcode column to make sure that I'm seeing the full barcode. And it's the second one here. Now to place a regular hold, of course, I would come up here and click place hold at the top. To place a copy level hold, I'm going to click on item hold. Now at this point, I actually have two options. I could do an item level hold or a call number hold. So if there is a library that maybe has 2 or 3 copies, you could do a call number hold, and that's going to target all 3 of those copies that are attached to that specific call number. So it's a little wider than an item level, but it's not as wide as a title level. That's fairly rare. I don't think I see that very often. It shows up as a volume hold in records, and it's very rare that those come through, but it is an option. I'm going to choose item hold. And at this point, I have a few options. So up here, it looks exactly the same as it did with our title hold, where I have all of my patron information and notification preferences. But down in this bottom section, I see that I'm placing an item hold on my record. And then I have 3 options. So the most common one is this regular item hold. This is the default one. It's already selected. I do have the option as a library to do a recall hold. This is not something we recommend, and it's not something that that happens often. But let's say if you are in a situation where you are reprocessing all of the books in your collection, and so you want to recall those holds that are out so you can bring them in for reprocessing, you can do recall holds to bring them back to your library. You also have the option to do a force item hold. This is something that I don't think we want you doing, because basically what you're doing is overriding policies to allow a hold to be placed on an item that would ordinarily fail. Now, this may be something that you want to do for a specific reason. For example, if you're trying to get something back for use within your library, maybe for a story time or a program or something like that, and you want this specific copy that belongs to you, and so you're trying to get that back for that program, and it would otherwise fail because maybe the account that places holds for all of your programming materials is currently overdue to the point that it's blocked. You could force that. Overall, we prefer that you don't, but that option is available here. The basic option here, the item hold, is what I'm going to do today, though. That's grayed out slightly so you can tell that it's the one selected. I'm going to click place hold, and my hold has succeeded. So if I go back into Sarah's account, I can see that she now has 6 holds, and this is the one that we've just done. We can see that it has a C here for hold type because that's a copy hold. We also see that it is waiting for the item. So where the other 2 holds that we just placed immediately targeted an item, and so it's just a matter of waiting for capture, this one is going to sit in this state of waiting for an item until the item that I've placed the hold on, that specific barcode, is checked back in. Because you may have seen while we were in the record that this copy is currently checked out, which means as long as it's checked out, it's not going to be targeted for this patron. And my guess is that the holds queue for this particular item is probably pretty long. So unless it happens to get checked back in at the pickup library that Sarah has selected, she's going to be waiting in that queue for a long time up until she gets to the top of the queue. copy level hold does not get prioritized within the queue. Um, so that's how you place a copy level hold. Again, it can't be done from the OPAC, so we won't do that part of the process. Finally, let's take a look at meta record holds. So this allows you to place a hold on a wider number of potential items. So you can do a hold on multiple formats with the same title. You can also do a hold on a title that has, 5 or 6 different formats, but only place the hold on 2 formats within that list. Again, it's going to target based on proximity, just like a regular title record hold. It can be placed by patrons in the OPAC, and it can be retargeted. All it's doing is allowing more than one record to be included in the targeting process. So let's take a look at what that actually looks like in process. So I'm going to start, let's start from just a catalog search. And I'm going to do a search for a title. Search is taking a moment. So this is just a regular search. I've searched all of Cardinal. I haven't done anything to kind of limit it. I've simply searched for the title. And I see that I have a large print book record. I have a regular print book record. I have a CD audiobook record. I have another regular print book record. I have it in Spanish. And I think that's it. But that is 5 different item types. And the patron that came in may be happy with probably 3 of those different records, because as we're seeing, there are 2 different records for the book. And between the 2 of them, we have 149 different potential items that could fulfill this. So obviously, simply placing a hold on this record that has 146 probably going to be enough to get my patron this title pretty quickly, because there are so many potential copies. But if I'm in a situation where I've got one record that has maybe 15 copies and another record that's got 12, maybe I want to be able to place a single hold on both of those records, and an item attached to either of them could fulfill it. I also may have a situation where the patron is perfectly happy with regular print and happy with large print too. So I could place a hold that covers both of those bases. The way I do that from the staff client, once I've done my search, I choose this option to group formats and editions. I'll redo my search with that option selected. And I can see now, instead of having 7 different potential records, I only have 2. And the second one was the one that wasn't included as actual something that I'd like to target. It's a completely different title. So basically, all of these other options have been grouped together, and I can choose place hold here to place a hold on all of them. So because I didn't start from my patron's record, I can put in her barcode at this point. So if she came up to the desk and had me search for this and then said, can you place a hold? At this point, I can put in her information. And once I've done that, all of her information comes up. And then I come down here, I see that I'm placing a meta record hold. And I can choose the specific things that I would like to be included in this net that I'm casting. So the patron says, I don't care if it is a book or a large print book, but I don't want a CD audiobook. I can remove that. And of course, in these situations where you have CD audiobooks and playaways and even DVDs, you're probably going to be removing those from a book hold. You do have the option to include all of them, but I think it's rare that a patron wouldn't care whether they get the movie or the book. They're generally looking for one or the other. You can also choose to only put the hold on the English editions and not the Spanish editions. And once I've done that, I place the hold. It's successful. And if I go back into Sarah's account, then I see now she's up to 7 holds. And this one has an M for its hold type because it's a meta record and it's already targeted something. If I take a look at this, that it's targeted, I can see that it was a record. It actually targeted the large print first. That is what it found first that was available to fulfill this hold. And so I'm able to basically include a lot of different options so I can potentially get my patron their title a little bit faster. This is especially useful when you have something like movies where the patron is fine with a Blu-ray, a DVD, or a Blu-ray DVD combo. They can play any of that. And so those are going to show up on 3 different records, but you can place a single hold that's going to cover all 3 of them. Let's see. Pat asks if a recalled hold would justify priority. I think recall holds will hit priority, but I'm actually not certain on that. I haven't messed with those much. I'll take a look at that. But yes, I believe that that would bump that request up to the top of the list. A regular copy hold would not prioritize, but a recall hold would. So that is the process of setting meta record holds. Are there any questions about that process? It can be done from the OPAC as well. It's fairly similar looking. We are almost to time, but I did want to briefly show hold groups because I do think that that's a useful process. If you have to leave, then you can certainly catch this on the recording, but if you're able to stay for another 5 to 10 minutes, I will walk us through the process of setting group holds. So a hold group is basically just a list of patrons with similar reading interests. It's essentially a user bucket. This is going to work for book clubs, but it could also work if you simply have a bunch of patrons who all like cozy mysteries and they want to be able to place holds every time you get a new cozy mystery. They'd like to place a hold on it. Or patrons who want to read the next James Patterson as quickly as they can. So it's sort of a blanket hold where as soon as you know that you're getting that James Patterson novel in, you can go ahead and place a hold for everyone who's signed up for that group. These are going to be title level holds, so they're not copy level. They are going to target, of course, throughout NC Cardinal, assuming age hold protection is not a factor. And it's a batch hold. You can place 15, 25, 100 holds all at once. So it's much faster than going through and placing individual holds for a book club when you've got 20 different members, so you have to place 20 different holds. You place a single hold and it will include everyone on the list. You can use it for book clubs, school groups, popular authors, genres, anything where you sort of have a large group of people who would like the same holds placed. So let's take a look at this. So this is in the circulation menu under hold groups. And from here, you can see that there are a lot of hold groups that are already created. Yadkin has quite a few of them. So if you have questions, you might reach out to people at Yadkin with questions about how it works. If I were to create a hold group, then I can add users to it. Currently, I have 2 users in this hold group that I have selected right now, which is my training group. If I wanted to add a new user, let's add Sarah. Then I can just search for my patron barcode. She didn't come up. I'm not sure why. Just do this. There we go. So I can select her and add her to my group. So she's currently in this add users tab. I can just add her to my hold group, and now my current users is up to 3. From here, I can place a hold for everyone in this group in a single sort of motion by coming over to hold events. I can see my previous hold events, and I can create a new one by clicking on new hold group event. And then I simply put in my record. So this would be my record ID number. And I create event, which basically means I place a hold on that record. As I said, these are all record level holds. And I've created this event, which means that I've created this hold. If I go back into Sarah and take a look at her account, she now has 8 holds, including one for fourth wing, which has already been targeted because it was a title level hold. And so I've just placed holds for 3 people at one time on the same record. If I go into this item itself and I look at my holds, see down here at the end, well, no, it's not even at the end. This may have a lot of holds on it. Okay, that's a very long hold list. We're not going to dig all the way through it, but I have placed holds for all 3 of those patrons through a single process rather than individual holds for each of them. So if you do have something like a book club where you're trying to get holds for a large number of people at once, this is really useful. It's probably going to be more useful if the items are not something that's really popular right now, simply because you're better able to ensure that the holds all come in around the same time if it's not a super popular item, but it is going to cast a much wider net than the process that I think a lot of libraries use, where they're placing copy level holds for each in order to fulfill each member of the book club. You also don't have that sort of confusion where somebody comes up to pick up their book club hold and you have to override the hold because you're checking it out to somebody who didn't actually place the hold. This allows the hold to be in the patron's name. It allows it to be title level, and it saves a lot of time if you have a very large number of people involved in this book club. It's also really useful if you have, for example, a bunch of patrons who all like Amish romance. You can create a list for Amish romance, and every time you get a new Amish romance in, you can create a group event for that group. And then they're all going to get placed on hold for that new title that you got. And so you can offer this as a service to your patrons where you can advertise, we've got this list. If you want to be part of it, let us know. And that's something that is the libraries that have instituted this have found it to be pretty popular. All right. Well, that is basically everything that I had to cover today. We do have a question. Is there a way to batch hold so multiple holds, but one title for one barcode? I'm not sure I understand what you mean. Do you mean that you're a batch hold of copy at the copy level? That is not possible. The batch holds can only be done at the title level. Because it's basically just putting everyone on that list into the queue for that record. And I appreciate everyone being here. I will get the recording out as soon as I have finished processing it and getting the captions and everything ready. And I will see you all at future webinars. So thank you.